Having been born of goodly parents, I, J. Duffy Palmer, son of Arthur and Eveline Palmer, was born in Taylor, Arizona on March 23, 1921. I was seventh of 11 children, most of which are shown here. My entire family consists of very good people, but as you can see, only the very, very good guys wear white.
Mom and Dad made a special effort to teach Duffy and I the value of honesty. Speaking of honesty, the story of George Washington and the cherry tree always comes to mind. With a good hatchet and no cherry trees available, Duffy and I settled for second best. Second best was 2 chickens. After separating the chickens from their legs with our trusty hatchets, we went directly to our mother and confessed that we had chopped down the chickens. We were rewarded in a different fashion than George Washington was. It was a little difficult sitting down the rest of that week.
Despite everything, the Palmer boys arranged to get through their younger years in pretty good stead, and all in one piece. But once in high school, the picture changed. On one occasion, Duffy's younger brother Belton was being punished by a schoolteacher, and Duffy thought it was quite uncalled for. So with one punch, no more schoolteacher. This cost him a trip to the principal's office, but sealed a brother's admiration, which has lasted for many years. Duffy's participation in high school athletics got him letters 2 years in track, 3 years in basketball, and 4 years in football. He made all-Northern and all-state selection in football in both junior and senior years. He was senior class president and vice president of student body. He was selected by a vote of the student body and by his grades as all-around boy in the high school and graduated as salutatorian. It was a real boon to the community when the Palmers moved to Holbrook, Arizona and started their dairy. It was especially exciting for the young ladies in the community, as it seemed there was a shortage of eligible LDS men of the courting age, and the Palmer family with their 9 sons were a welcome remedy to that problem, especially for the girls of the Jensen family.
My first glimpse of my future wife, Jocelyn Jensen, was when she was about 15 years of age, and I went to her home. There she was, hiding behind the stove, gnawing on a finger she had popped into her mouth.
I'm Josie's older sister, Lena. I had been dating Duffy, and Josie had been dating Duffy's younger brother, Belton. One evening, while I was working at the local theater, and Josie was home alone, Duffy came to the house. He asked Josie for a date, and thinking she had misunderstood him, Josie told him I was at work. Duffy told her it was she he was asking. Belton began dating our younger sister Ann. Those Palmer boys had good taste in girls. After that, Josie didn't share Duffy with any of the rest of us. They were married 2 years later on September 25th, 1940.
It was a calm, peaceful Sunday morning. A slight breeze came in from the east as the waves rolled lazily onto the white sandy beach. Then out of the north came the faint hum of airplanes. Within minutes, the once restful landscape lay riddled with destruction of bombs. News flashed to the American homeland. Pearl Harbor was under attack by the Japanese. The country had been taken by surprise. The day of this infamous attack, which was never to be forgotten, was December 7th, 1941. A feeling of unrest seized the nation. With this uneasiness in their hearts, Duffy and Josie moved to California, where Duffy worked in the defense plant, designed to do his part. Then came August 1942. Duffy Palmer and his brother Belton enlisted in the United States Marines. Physicals finished and papers signed, brought a stark realization that the time for parting had come. How uncertain the future seemed at this point in life.
How difficult it was to say goodbye to that beautiful young life, soon due to have our first baby. When would I again be able to run my fingers through her warm brown hair, laugh with her, and share these glances that tell of the deep love we have for each other?
When again will those strong sun-browned arms be able to encircle me with his soft voice, brush away all my fears I have for him?
Boot camp was in San Diego. Then there was 9 months of duty in Alaska. Next came orders to Camp Pendleton. Marines from everywhere gathered at Pendleton as the 5th Division began to form. The best thing about being back at Pendleton was that Duffy, Josie, and little Jimmy, born 2 months after Duffy enlisted, could all be together again.
Through this brief time together, an air of anxiety hung over us, and 2 quick goodbyes must once again be said. This time, it's a little harder because now there are 2 so precious to leave behind. Yet duty calls, and I must go serve my country.
There was a long ride back down to San Diego, passing all the familiar sights, then down to the waterfront and the world of gray-nosed ships. The long lines of Marines moved up the gangway into the transport ship, where the officers checked their names off the embarkation rosters. Then down the ladders to the damp, lit compartments that were to be home for who knows how long. 3 days out of San Diego, the weather turned tropical, and the scuttlebutt had it that they were going straight to Japan and attacked from the north. But of course, that was only rumors. A few days later, the towering cones of Mauna Kea and Mauna Loa came into view, and the 5th Division overseas home was Camp Tara on the Big Island of Hawaii, where they underwent 4 more months of intensive training. 2 days out of Pearl, the target was officially announced as Iwo Jima, a small island only 2.5 by 6 miles, covered with thick volcanic dirt. It had to be taken at all costs so we could land, refuel, and resupply our B-29s with bombs for raids on Japan. While they were en route, the Navy was already softening up the island. The Japs had dug in to stay. The gray streaks of dawn ushered in the opening of D-Day, and through the early morning light could be seen the hump of Iwo Jima. The Pacific Fleet opened up pre-dawn bombardment by hurling tons of high explosives into the pear-shaped island. Blasts rocked the landing beaches, the airfields, the rocky ridges to the north, and Mount Suribachi looked as if it were steaming. It had been hit so many times. The gun crews from the destroyers seemed to be trying to blow the island out of the sea as chunks of dirt flew into the air, turning the clear morning sky into a dusty, smoky haze. The Marines now aboard their Amtraks began to zigzag toward the shore. Our fire lifted and the first wave of Marines hit the beach. The loose powdery sand offered the Marines poor cover at best. Foxholes filled in as quickly as they were dug, and the men sank over their shoe tops in the loose, ashy soil. Sergeant Palmer led his men up the beach, over the sand ridges, and was assigned to take the rocky ridges to the north. Others of the 50,000 Marine force was assigned to take Mount Suribachi. The fighting was bitter, even savage, and progressed slowly against the tremendous odds. Finally, after 4 days of determined and heroic fighting, the flag was raised on the summit of Mount Suribachi, an incident that signified the beginning of the end of the war in the Pacific. Below the summit, fighting went on. Only flamethrowers and grenades and demolition crews could force the Japs out of their 10-foot thick bunkers. A kindly God looked down upon 2 young men who received a blessing that they would give them the courage they needed. These 2 men, Duffy and Belton, were given the blessing of each other, natural-born brothers fighting side by side, each giving the other strength to survive through another day. What greater blessing could 2 brothers need at this time when all hell was loosed around them? Together they knelt in a foxhole, grasping each other's hand and in turn offered a prayer to our Most High God to give them the wisdom, strength, and the courage to do that day what must be done, and to protect them from all danger from the enemy.
Many years in the future. His marriage took place in September 1940, but he didn't get the chance to go to school until September 1947. This was 7 years and 3 children later. He first went to Utah State and then to the University of Utah. The next 5 years were difficult ones. Work and hard study, along with constant church activity for the bishop, while his wife ran a nursery to supplement the family's income. Oh no, Dad, not much again. He graduated from the University of Utah Law School in June of 1952 and was admitted to the bar that same year. In December of 1952, he moved his family to Clearfield to set up a law office. He knew that things would be slow, so he took a job in the Clearfield State Bank. He needed the money, so he went where the money was. He worked at the bank for 2 years. At the end of that 2 years, his practice and the work as assistant district attorney kept him busy, so he left the bank. His first law office was in the Smith Building, and so was the office of the other attorney that was in Clearfield at the time.
In those days, Duffy was his own office manager, secretary, you name it, he was it. The other day, one of his first clients came into the office and showed a will that Duffy had typed back in 1954. Duffy looked at it and remarked, "I hadn't realized that I was that poor of a typist."
Bishop Palmer was assistant district attorney to Milton Hess starting in 1954 until 1967. It was in 1961 that the two of them established a practice together and built their present law offices. Since that time, they have taken into the firm 2 other lawyers. There have been the humorous days in the practice, and there have been the sad days, and those days that have proven very satisfying.
I remember a case that Duffy was handling. He had worked hard and the trial was coming to a close. It was Duffy's day to make his summation to the jury. He was reading from his carefully typed notes. In his inimitable way, he read with great feeling, ending by saying, "Period, paragraph."
For 18 years, Bishop Palmer has practiced law, and in that time, the most memorable case that he has had, and the one that probably depicts the man and the lawyer that we so much love, is the Mary Woodall case. May I give you a brief background to that case and its outcome? Mary Woodall, at the time she shot her husband, was estranged from him. This estrangement was brought about by the extreme cruelty of her husband, and the fact that he had beaten her on several occasions. She feared him very much. On the day of the killing, he had returned to her home, and out of fear, she shot him. The family of Mary sought out one of the best trial lawyers they could find. He would take the case for $10,000 if 1/3 was paid before he took the case. They were a poor family, and they soon gave up in despair and threw their plight on the mercy of the court. Duffy was appointed by the court to take the case for considerably less, and nothing down. The secretary describes the first meeting and the feelings of Mary as the trial proceeded.
Never was there a more dejected human than Mary as the trial started. She could see no hope, and her countenance showed it. If ever a person showed defeat, despair, and that failure was the word of the day, Mary did. Life was all over, and she knew it, and expressed as much. Duffy's deep humanistic feelings went out to this poor, dejected individual, and he resolved within himself to help her, because if there was ever a person who needed to win, she was it. It was with this resolve that he went to work. The record shows the outcome of that work, but it doesn't necessarily show the human side. As the trial progressed, Mary changed from a person of dejection to one of hope, and then to the belief that she may be freed. The light began to come back into her eyes.
The jury received instructions and was sent away to deliberate. This trial was no different than so many other murder trials, for the interest that it created. The audience was made up of all types, and each had made up his own mind as to her guilt. The jury came in, and the judge asked,
"Have you reached a verdict?"
The foreman of the jury handed to the judge the paper on which was written their verdict. The judge read the paper, looked at the court, and read aloud to the court.
"The jury has found you, Mary Woodall, not guilty."
The people in the courtroom showed their agreement by their spontaneous ovation. The light that had come back into Mary's eyes was now dimmed with tears as she hugged the man that had given her new life. There are many sides to the practice of law, and because of its very nature, many of the things that go on must be of a confidential nature. It is because of this that it becomes difficult to get the real and complete story. We cannot reveal the next three people in the life of Duffy. The first you hear will be that of a judge, the second a friend, and the third that of a young man.
There have been many trials that I have officiated at where Attorney Palmer acted as one of the attorneys, either as a prosecutor or for the defense. It has been a real pleasure to have him in my court. His integrity, his honesty, and his humaneness reassures me that his clients are being fairly treated. This is attested to by the fact that Mr. Palmer has not lost a jury trial during the 18 years he has practiced law.
It would be interesting to know how many people there are in this area who have been saved from a suit because of Duffy's actions. Many an angry individual bent on taking a neighbor or some other person to court because of an alleged wrong has sought out Duffy. It was at this point that Duffy had to have the wisdom of Solomon. If, in Duffy's thinking, the wronged individual was not justified in suing, he would try to talk him out of it. In case this did not work, he would refuse to take the case. This usually worked, and a court case was prevented, and the character of several people was saved.
I was in deep trouble and I needed help. My father took me to see Mr. Palmer. He very patiently heard my story, then talked to me about many things, not just the trouble I was in. I really felt that he was interested in me. After talking to me, he let me know that what I had done was wrong, and that he would not guarantee that he could do much for me, but that he would try. He wanted to give me another chance only because of his confidence in my going straight. It worked, and I hope that I'll never betray that confidence he showed in me that day.
Bishop Palmer has now ventured into a new area. He wants to be back where the money is, not as a bank clerk, but as president. He is now the president of the Bank of Northern Utah, and we want to wish him success in this new field of endeavor.
The gospel of Jesus Christ has always played an important part in the life of Bishop Palmer. At the time he was wounded while serving his country, he pleaded with his Heavenly Father to spare his life. He told his Heavenly Father then, if his life would be spared, he would spend all of his days serving him. This Bishop Palmer has done, and continues to do so today. He is giving his time and his talents to help build up the kingdom of our Heavenly Father on this earth.
I was baptized a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints on March 23, 1929, in an irrigation ditch at Taylor, Arizona during a blizzard. I ran all the way home. Uncle Charlie Bryant thought the entire family had flipped their lids, he being at home when we returned. I was covered with ice and snow, and I'll never forget how good the fire in the fireplace at the old Taylor home felt. I was ordained to the following offices in the priesthood: a deacon by Arthur Palmer, a teacher on April 5th, 1936 by Arthur Palmer, a priest on June 5th, 1938 by Arthur Palmer, an elder in 1940 by Arthur Palmer.
September the 25th, 1940, in the Mesa Temple was the happiest day of my life. To know that my dream had come true of being married for time and all eternity. As we knelt across the altar in that beautiful temple, everything was so very sacred and solemn. I'll never forget as you smiled and winked at me, and I nearly fainted. You have always been able to make life for me so exciting and enjoyable. With your wonderful sense of humor, you've always been so fun to be with. Our honeymoon was taken on Liberty Head Nichols. You had saved, and then coming back home to our little 3-room shack that was truly a palace to me, with the second-hand furniture you had bought and had it all paid for, so we didn't start our marriage in debt. I'm so grateful that you always honored the priesthood that you held, and you've been so patient and understanding of my many faults and shortcomings. I'm so proud to have the privilege of having your children, for I remember the advice given to me by my Uncle Dick before we were married. Josie, will you be proud to have this man's children? If you are, your marriage will succeed. I love you more today than I did the day I married you, for our love has truly deepened each year. Thanks for letting me be your wife and the mother of your children. I love you, Duffy.
Since Josie and Duffy were married, Bishop Palmer has served in many positions of the church. As a Sunday school teacher for many years, a coach and a player of MM basketball. He served on a stake mission, superintendency of the MIA in 7 different wards, served in the branch presidency of Stadium Village at the University of Utah while going to school, been on the High Council, been in the bishopric, and now serving as bishop of this ward.
Congratulations on your 50th birthday. Now you know what I've been going through for the last several years. This is your old buddy and co-worker, Eldon Barlow. In remembering some of our associations, Duffy, I can't help but recall that we had one of the most closely knit bishoprics that I have ever known. You and I and Don had some wonderful experiences together, along with those fine brethren that served as our clerks over the years. And I'm not forgetting the wonderful food that we were served at your home. You and Josie were really accomplished when it comes to providing some Mexican dinners. And I remember how some of us were a little bit burned up, shall we say, with some of that hot Mexican food the first time, but then you were good enough to cool it down a little bit for us, but it was real enjoyable. And it was the most enjoyable experience for all of us. You have certainly accomplished some wonderful things in the years you've been in this area, Duffy, and I certainly want to commend you on that. You're doing a great work now where you are as Bishop of your ward there, and I'm sure that your people have learned to love you and appreciate you, just as we did in the 3rd Ward a few years ago. I have always considered you and Josie and your family among our very finest friends, and I trust that this relationship will remain on this basis as long as we live. In fact, we might even extend a little further than that. But I do again commend you on achieving the high point in your life, 50 years of age. And it may be a little dubious distinction, but nevertheless, it's a real accomplishment, believe me. May the Lord bless you in your work and sustain you in your obligations to your ward and to your church and to your family. Thank you.
I remember Duffy when he first, the first that I remember him when he came to Clearfield. We were meeting in the old chapel down on South Main Street in Clearfield, and one of the first things I remember was that Duffy gave a talk in sacrament meeting, and I believe it was just a few days after he gave that talk that they had to tear the building down and move the benches out, and that's when we moved up into our new building up on Center Street before Duffy went into the as a member of the bishopric. I've had many years of association with Duffy. I met him soon after he came to Clearfield, and have been very well acquainted with him. I have a very deep admiration and respect for him and his ability and his dedication. He and I went on the High Council at the same time when the Clearfield Stake and the North Davis Stake, the Clearfield Stake was created and North Davis Stake was divided. We served on the High Council together for a number of years until he was made Bishop of the 2nd Ward, and then soon after that I was released and made Bishop of the 5th Ward. We've had a lot of good times together. I remember one High Council party we had, and it was our turn to be the hosts for this, and we served Mexican food one night. And Duffy, in fixing these up, would go along and pick out who one was going to go to and make it especially hot. And I remember he prepared one for President Broadbent one time that was especially hot. And somehow it got mixed up and ended up at Grace Steed's plate. And I understand that there's been some hot words, perhaps, between Duffy and the Steed. Seriously, I think Duffy is one of the most dedicated people that's ever been my opportunity to know. For many years we met together, sometimes early Sunday morning in his home, and he's always had a great interest and a dedication in youth, and I've seen him give of his time and of his talents very liberally to help people in the church and people outside the church, and particularly the youth, and he's always been very concerned. I know that he has a real testimony of the gospel, and he's the kind of individual who doesn't just know this, but he practices it in his everyday life. And I've known of many people who are grateful to him for the influence they've had for the influence he's had in their lives in helping them to gain a testimony of the gospel, to live unitedly together as families, to learn the true meaning of a Christian life. And this time I would like to pay tribute to Duffy and tell him how much I have appreciated being associated with him, and to acknowledge the example that he's been to me all my life. And I certainly hope that this might be a joyous occasion for him, and that the future years might continue to be wonderful years for him, and that he might have the blessings of the Lord to be with him in all that he endeavors to do.
Bishop Palmer has dedicated his life to serving the youth. He has a natural talent making friends, gaining respect, and having down-to-earth, clean fun with all of the young people. They idolize him. This is a letter from President David O. McKay, in response to Bishop Palmer's concern about youth, marriage, and some of the evils of society. After serving in the bishopric of the Clearfield's 3rd Ward, he was called to serve on the Clearfield Stake High Council. From here he was called to be Bishop of the Clearfield 2nd Ward. After a few years he yearned to return to the farm where his family could taste of some of his boyhood memories. Bishop Palmer moved to Syracuse. He served as M-Men basketball coach and while residing in the Syracuse Ward. Then in September of 1968, again the Lord saw fit that he serve as bishop of the newly made Syracuse 3rd Ward.
I'm glad that my dad's a bishop. He's the best bishop in the whole ward.
Bishop and Josie Palmer are the proud parents of 5 boys and 2 girls. a closely knit family with great spiritual understanding. Bishop, here are some of your grandchildren, along with some of your children.
He started out in life at 15 pounds, blonde, curly-headed. At the age of 3, he took the paper and lit it at the stove and went to blow it out, and instead of blowing it out, he sucked it in and made quite a mess of himself. Then he didn't like oatmeal mush, and I told him he'd have to eat it. So every time his dish was cleaned up, but he was putting it under the table to the cat. Then he and Gus and Belton decided to make me a fur coat. We had a dog, Old Monk, and they tied a rope around his neck. And one got a hold of one end, Belton one and Duffy one, and Gus shot him. Then they decided they'd skin him and make their mother a fur coat because she needed one. At the age of 5, his daddy left for the mission field. And we had our home evening. We read the church works all through. And he always had to give a little poem. Here I stand on 2 little chips, come and kiss my sweet little lips. He was always a good student and an athlete. Two games, one with Winslow, Preston Bushman was coming around the end carrying the ball, and his mother was saying, come on, Preston, come on, Preston. And I could see these big old legs, the Duffs are coming, and I was saying, come on, Duff, come on, Duff. And lo and behold, right in front of the grandstand, old Duffy caught him and spilled him. His mother said, who's that? Who on earth's that? I said, that's my boy. And then he had this serious operation after a game in Gallup. And then he went to work in Winslow, and he met the beautiful black-eyed Josie. And I love her. Then World War II came. And they asked him if there was anybody going in that they'd like to have stay in. And they together, and they said yes, they want to stay together. I got a letter one time, and they said that they were going to be separated. Knowing me, I just called A.A. Vandergrift, head of the Marines in Washington, and told him for the honor of the Marines, my boys must stay together. If they hadn't done, Duffy, your bishop would never be here today. The power of the priesthood has been proven so much in all of his life. He snatched back from death many times. God bless you always. His life will be spared for a long time to come. I'm proud of you, son. Bye.
And here is your mother, Evelyn Palmer, flown all the way from Arizona.